Let's try that again, shall we? Alright guys, how you doing? It's Rabea. Hope you're all well. For all those that are new to this video and haven't seen the other one, you can feel free to skip to this minute marker. Anyone that was on the last video and saw it, I just want to say a few words. I already made this video and uploaded it about a week ago, but I took it down and I've decided to redo the entire video. In a nutshell, we're comparing the Neural DSP Quad Cortex's capture feature with the Kemper Profiler's profiling feature. I'd made a clean capture and a clean profile and a high gain capture and a high gain profile of my amp, and then I'd got an ABY pedal and we just jumped between the two to see which one sounded and felt closer. Obviously I'm judging the feel because you can't on the other side of YouTube, and you were judging the sound along with me. But as many of you pointed out, it wasn't necessarily fair because I didn't use the refine feature on the Kemper Profiler. The reason for that was I wanted to compare straight out of the gate capture and profiling features, but as many of you pointed out very angrily, that it's part of the process of the Kemper. Now I own a Kemper, that is my personal Kemper. I've used it for years and I've done plenty of profiles with it and stuff. I love the thing. And to be perfectly honest, it was a little bit disheartening to see so many people assume that I was being biased and a bit of a shill and, you know, just trying to throw Kemper under the bus because, like, I use the gear, I've recorded with it, I've done all sorts of stuff with it, so why would I, like, slag it off? You know, I wouldn't do that. Yes, I get paid to make gear videos by many brands, but as I've said a million times on this channel, I only review gear that I personally want to review, that I know I'm going to enjoy playing through, and it's going to be a good sound, and it's working with brands that I'm friends with, that I know and enjoy. I've tried to do less and less of just taking gear demos and just reviewing whatever, because it's not really in my interest. For me, I like to make music. I'm a musician, so I like to get all these new pedals from these brands that I enjoy, or amps or guitars, and then just jam on it and play music. The amount of playing that John cuts out of these videos is ridiculous. There's so much B-roll guitar playing because I'm just jamming out, trying to find sounds and inspiring tones within the gear. Apparently, you know, because I get paid to make gear videos, it's considered, you know, fake, or at least my opinion's false or whatever. That's fine. If you think that, I can't control that. I'm not going to worry about it. Ultimately, I'm here to make music with the gear that gets sent over because I'm lucky enough to be in that position as a profession. And I'm just going to carry on doing it, and I enjoy it. And for those that enjoy it too, I really appreciate you being here. For those that think it's just a load of nonsense and I'm not, there's nothing I'm saying with any value, and that I'm a shill and that, you know, I'm fake about what I do, then I really apologize that you feel that way. I can't do anything about it. But in any case, I just wanted to say that. So let's crack on with the video. Let's get back to it. Okay, so we're back in the room. We're going to be capturing and we're going to be profiling and we're going to be comparing. That's what this video is. This time I will refine the profiles so that everyone can be happy about that. But also, I'd noticed a couple of comments, people saying that Kemper struggles to profile Victory amps. I didn't know that was really the case. So basically, to go one further, I'm going to profile, I'm going to capture my Kraken because I know the sound of it and the feel, but then I'm also going to capture an amp and profile an amp that I've never done before, and that's the Mezzabarba M0 Overdrive, which is a hand-wired point-to-point amplifier. So hopefully these devices will enjoy profiling and capturing hand-wired amplifiers more than PCB amplifiers. Let's see what happens. So I'm going to try and get through this as quick as possible so we can get on with the meat and potatoes, but signal chain, so you know how I'm doing this. I use Universal Audio Apollo interfaces. They have their own mixing app. Within that, I can sum any channels that I want down a Q output, which is basically a alternative output. So I bought myself a DB25 breakout cable from D'Addario, looks like this. So here is the DB25 breakout cable from D'Addario. It's basically a big snake cable, and it comes with 8 either TRS jacks, or you can do XLR, or you can do mono jacks or whatever. And in this case, I'm just using this to send the signal down into my devices for capture and profiling. Just like in the other video, I need to tell you my criteria for what I think is going to be more to my tastes, and that is firstly sound. I want a full range of sound, but really what's important is the feel. I want to feel like it's the closest it is to my amplifier, because that's what I prefer, that's what I'm used to. So that's what I'm basing this comparison on, the sound and the feel. I also need to reiterate that I'm doing the exact same thing between the Quad Cortex and the Kemper, exact same conditions. I'm going to use the same guitar, same settings on the amplifier, same cab settings on the torpedo, everything identical. So all I'm really going to be doing is unplugging the DB25 from one device to the other and then running the capture or profile. I want you guys to know this is as fair as I could possibly do it within my studio. I figured this was the fairest way to do it, given the fact I'll actually refine the profile this time, and hopefully we'll be able to get, as fair as possible, comparison between the two, and that'll help you guys make any decisions you want about which device you prefer. Let's begin. We're going to start with the Kraken. We're going to do a clean capture, and then we're going to do an overdrive capture. For all those that want to see how this works, in case you haven't seen already, if we're on a preset like this, which has got nothing there, we hit the three dots, and we go down to where it says New Neural Capture, and from there we get our cheat sheet. It helps us work out where to plug things into. Super useful. Okay, so we're on the level setting page now for the Quad Cortex. So I'm going to play some chords, hit auto set, and allow it to work out the best in level for my guitar. Okay, now I've got the levels and I'm happy with the tone, which I am. It's a lovely, sparkly, sort of clean sound. So I'm happy with that. I'm just going to go ahead and capture it. Okay, so we've done the first clean capture with the Cortex. This is the reference amplifier. Here comes Cortex. Sounds pretty good. One thing I'm noticing is the Cortex is a little quieter. And I've seen that before. I think on Pete Thorne's video, he mentioned that it captures a little bit quieter, so you can just bump that up. But to be honest, it sounds really close. So we'll save that, and then we'll move on to the high gain capture. Clean Kraken cap redo, save. Okay, now that we've done that, I'm going to swap over to the high gain, change the cab settings and presets that I've got going on to suit the high gain tone. Okay, so I've got my high gain capture set up. Just wanted to say, whilst you're getting your capturing going, you want to use the auto set feature if you're getting one of these and you're doing your own capturing. It's really handy. It speeds up the process loads. Anyway, this is gain 2 with the preamp focus. This is what we've got. So that's the sound of the Kraken. That's what we're going to capture. Here we go. Cool, now it's doing its training. It's going to take the rest of the time to just work out how it's going to recreate the sound and the feel. So yeah, let's wait and to see what it sounds like when it's done. Okay, so we've got our high gain capture now. I'm going to go ahead and show you what it sounds like. This is the reference amp. And here's Cortex. It's damn close, really good, and it feels the same, to be perfectly honest. But we'll do more extensive testing when we do the actual comparison, so I'm going to save that. Kraken Hev Cap Redo. Okay, so I've got the clean capture and the high gain capture with the Kraken. Now, I was going to go ahead and do the profiler, the Kemper profiler versions, but someone commented saying that Kemper struggles with victory. So before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and capture the Mezzabarba M0 Overdrive. As I said before, it's a hand-built point-to-point amplifier, so doesn't get much more sort of boutique, I guess, built than that. It's like hand-built. So let's go ahead and capture that, and then we'll move across to the Kemper. Okay, onto the Mezzabarba high gain tone. I'm getting quite a big ground hum, and I think it's to do with maybe the circuit in the amp or something. I've tried everything I can to try and get rid of this ground hum. I think it's because we've got access to negative feedback on a dial on the front. There's a lot of gain going on, but the cool thing is that when you profile or capture, it generally doesn't capture the ground hum as well. But in any case, this is what the Mezzabarba sounds like. Right, let's go ahead and capture. Okay, so we've finished capturing the Mezzabarba. This is the sound of the reference amp. Cortex. So you can hear quite clearly, it's very close. Again, the feel and the response and the pick attack, everything, very close again. So we're done with all the neural capturing. Let's move over to the Kemper. Right. Okay. Sorry about that. I was just putting the DB25 into the back of the Kemper so that we can crack on and do that. So let's move over to the desk and do the profiling. Okay, so now we're on to the Kemper. We're going to be doing some profiling of the Kraken. We're going to do the high gain and the clean, as I said before. We'll start with the high gain because I'm already on the cab preset. So let's go ahead and capture. This is the reference, so this is how it sounds going in. So that's the exact same settings on the Kraken. I haven't touched anything, same pickup, same everything. So now we're going to go ahead and profile it. Okay, so the profile's finished. It's come out really quiet in comparison. But anyway, I've boosted it. This is the sound of the reference amp. And here is the Kemper profile pre-refine. So it's lacking a lot of low end, not quite as thumpy, so let's go ahead and refine. Okay, we've finished refining. This is the Kemper amp. And this is the reference amp. Back to the Kemper amp. Okay, so you've heard the sound of the high gains, so now we're going to swap over the cab preset and we're going to profile the clean channel of the Kraken. Sounds really nice, so let's go ahead and profile it. Okay, so that's finished profiling. Let's see how it's done. This is the reference amp. Here comes the Kemper. So it sounds really close. Let's refine it. So I finished refining. Here's the sound of the Kemper amp. And here is the reference amp. I'm happy with that, so we're going to go ahead and save that. So, truth be told, I tried to profile the Mezzabarba M0 overdrive, managed to get away with it with the quad Cortex, but the Kemper was not happy. It didn't want to profile it properly, so I decided against it. I think that's something to do with the feedback control on that particular amp, because it had such a ground hum, I couldn't get rid of it. I've never had that with any other amp in my rig, in my studio. And without trying to add loads of other stuff to the rig to try and get rid of that, I figured it, was starting to get convoluted here. So rather than, persist, I decided to get rid of the Mezzabarba. We're going to profile and we're going to capture and compare the Soldano SLO 100 on like a mid-gain crunch channel with loads of dynamic range, so I can swap out pickups and chime it up, or I can dig in and get really heavy. I figured that was a good test to put against both the quad Cortex and the Kemper. So I'm apologizing now because we couldn't do the Mezzabarba, but let's just get rid of that bit and just A/B, clean and overdrive on Kraken, and then the high dynamic range crunch sort of chimey thing on the SLO. I'm doing this because I want to make it as fair as possible. Like, I know some of you guys said that the Kemper struggles with certain amps, so I'm trying to get rid of all of that as possible, but I wanted to keep tests similar to last time, so that's why we're doing the same amps, but throwing this in there as well. Okay, so I've dialed in a tone on the Soldano SLO. I wanted a kind of mid-gain, so it's on the crunch channel, and the reason is that I can dig in on the bridge pickup and get a barky, sort of nice fat rhythm. But if I go to, say, position 4, I can chime it up. Sounds great, so let's go ahead and profile that. Okay, so it's finished profiling. This is the sound of the reference amp. The chimey sound again. So this is the Kemper amp. Position 4. Reference amp. Kemper amp. So let's go ahead and refine. Right, so I've finished refining, so this is the Kemper amp. And here's the reference amp. Okay, so now I've finished profiling the Soldano as well. The final step of all of this is to go back to the quad Cortex, capture the Soldano, and then finally we'll be able to do an A/B comparison, and hopefully we'll get it right this time. Okay, so I'm back on the quad Cortex. Literally all I've done is taken the DB25 out of the Kemper, put it back in quad Cortex. I've done my auto set, so I'm happy with my levels. This is the sound of the SLO. And then that position 4 chime. Happy with that, so let's go and capture. Okay, so the quad Cortex is finished capturing the SLO. This is the reference. And here's quad Cortex. Okay, well that's worked. It sounds really good, so let's go ahead and save that. All right, so now we've done all our profiling and all our capturing, so at this point I'm going to go ahead and set up an ABY pedal so we can quickly jump between the Quad Cortex captures and the Kemper profiles. Okay, so we're finally at the point where we can A/B the profiles and the captures. So just to quickly go over how I've done it, on the Quad Cortex here, you can see I've got my captures set up in stompbox mode. So this is my clean capture, this is my high gain capture of the Kraken, and this is my SLO crunch capture. I've also loaded in a whole reverb because I use the legacy reverb on the Kemper as well. I figured it'd be nice to throw that in there as well, so we can hear how it all sounds. The ABY, essentially my guitar goes into it, and then I've got output A going to the Quad Cortex, so that's the red LED, and then the green LED for B is the Kemper, just so you know. So red, Quad Cortex, green, Kemper. So we're going to start out with no reverb on either, and we're just going to listen to the clean capture of the Kraken and the clean profile of the Kraken. And last but not least, I absolutely 100% wholeheartedly promise that those profiles have been refined. So we are now on an even playing field. Same guitar, same position, same pickups, same everything. Okay, let's start with the Quad Cortex. I'm going to stay in position 4, the really chimey position, and then we'll swap over to the Kemper. Here we go. Quad Cortex. Kemper. Quad Cortex. Kemper. Quad Cortex. Kemper. Okay, next up I'm going to add some reverb. So I'm going to dial in pretty much what I would consider to be as close as possible to the same amount of reverb between the two devices. So we've currently got a mix at around 30% there, and then we'll do the same on the Kemper. Okay, we've got some reverb dialed in. This is the Quad Cortex with some whole reverb. Sounds great. Kemper. Sounds to me like there's a little bit more reverb on the Kemper side. We're back on the Quad Cortex. Kemper. To be fair, the clean capture and the clean profile to my ear sound very close. I'm feeling very similar feel as well, I must say. I would probably say that there's a tiny bit more what feels like a spongier response with the Quad Cortex. I'm just going to take off the reverb for a sec. It feels like it's got a more of a spongy, almost natural compression to it. And then the Kemper. All I would say between the two in terms of feel is that one feels more supportive. The Quad Cortex is a more natural feel. Like I said in the other video, which is not online anymore, but it's almost like the Kemper is a little bit flatter in its response, like it's a bit spiky. When you dig in, you notice that transient more than you do with the Quad Cortex, which I prefer the feel of just on that front. It's a little bit more like the amp feels. with that natural sag almost, you know. Anyway, that's the sound of the clean. Let's move on to the high gain. Okay, so we've moved on to the high gain Kraken capture and the high gain Kraken profile. So remember, A is Quad Cortex and B is Kemper profiler. So here we go. This is the Cortex on the high gain, gain 2, preamp focus in. Here comes the Kemper. Again, they're really not that far apart in terms of sound. What I would say is that the Kemper is a bit woollier in the low mid, like compared to the Quad Cortex, which is more accurate. That low mid woof kind of thing is not in the Kraken at all. That's not a characteristic in its sound to me. They sound a lot closer. I must admit, refining, believe it or not, did make a difference. But they do sound a lot closer. I would just say that the Quad Cortex is marginally more realistic in terms of that low mid response, definitely. It's almost like cloudy, but it doesn't sound bad. I would say in the high mid somewhere on the Kemper, it sounds a bit coctois. Yeah, it's not a lot in it, but I'm noticing some what feel like EQ compromises or making up the EQ a little bit to sort of emulate the sound of the amp with the Kemper. It's doing a really good job, but once again, modern day technology, maybe, I'm not sure, just the algorithms, whatever. But in terms of realism and more, a little bit more authentic response and all the rest of it, that attack, again, Quad Cortex. But still sounds great. I'm just noticing these, I'm being really specific now. Let's try it with a bit of reverb. Here is the Quad Cortex. Kemper. Maybe there's a tiny bit more volume on Cortex here. Oh, it's really close, I must admit. In terms of feel, all I'm really noticing is that attack response kind of sagging that feels more like the amp that I know coming from Cortex, and like that coctois EQ thing that the Kemper's kind of doing. But that's just to me in the room. Like, obviously, when we hear back the video, it might be different, but that's just what I'm picking up here. So that's the high gain one. And now, to please all those who may think that the Kemper doesn't quite do the victory justice, let's move on to the SLO capture and profile. Okay, so finally, the final part of the test, the most, I guess, unknown part of the test now. So I've done the capture and the profile of the SLO on a crunch, where I could then dial in like a chimey sound by just using the different pickup positions. So like a kind of larger dynamic range crunch channel. So it's not the overdrive channel of the SLO, it's the crunch channel with the bright switch in. Anyway, this is how it sounds. This is how we captured it from Cortex. It really sounds like the SLO, and the feel that that's great. Right, Kemper. More gain. And it's smoother in the high mid. So this is the Quad Cortex here is definitely more accurate to the sound that I dialed in with the SLO. It's got that kind of clang in the mids, which helps for this tone. Whereas on the Kemper, it's smoother, more compression, more gain. So when we go to position 4, a bit hairier than the SLO. I'm definitely preferring the sound of the capture from the Quad Cortex and the feel of it compared to the Kemper. I feel like the Kemper has done a really good job, but it's added EQ that's not there, and it's kind of compressed it a bit too much almost. Because like I said, I haven't changed anything. I literally just unplugged one back into the other, did the whole profiling thing. So, but... And the other thing is that it actually, the Quad Cortex just sounds more like the sound of the SLO. It's got more openness. You feel the weight. There's definitely a flatness, like a flatness in dynamics and response with the Kemper. Not in a bad way, just in comparison. I mean, that's just, you feel that thump compared to... You might not notice that at your end, but I'm feeling that definitely. Last thing we'll do is play with some reverb. So here is the SLO capture with the Quad Cortex, bit of whole reverb. Kemper. Okay then, so I've finally got to the end of this video for the second time, and I really hope this has been a better result for you guys, all those that were concerned and upset about the first episode. But I've gone ahead and just redone the tests. I've refined the profiles, and I have to say it did make a difference. I hold my hands up and say it absolutely made a difference. With regards to the comparison overall, I would say that time alone and technology advancements alone of what made me prefer the Quad Cortex over the Kemper. Now, that's on a sound and feel basis I'm talking, because in terms of feature set, UI, the kind of things you could do with the tones after the fact is leaps and bounds. Like the Quad Cortex just completely wipes the floor with the Kemper. I can make stereo rigs with these captures. I can add loads of different effects and do all sorts to the sound of this. Whereas in the Kemper, I'm stuck with my profile, my reverb, delay, and stomps that you can add in, but you can't create stereo rigs. You can't use two profiles at once. None of that stuff. So let's move all that off the table. Quad Cortex prevails in that side of things, but we're talking sound and feel. Now, the only one of those that you guys can really help me with and listen to and form your own opinions is the sound, because obviously I'm feeling how it feels in the room. I prefer the feel of the Quad Cortex. I think it feels more like my amp. I think they've done something with regards to the response, the sag or the compression or some way of when you play the guitar into the Quad Cortex, it feels more like my amp. And I know that for a fact, for me personally. In terms of sound, what's really interesting is when you refine the profiles, you notice that it starts to add EQ that it didn't before, and it like compresses things and it like ties it all together. It like adds this like production sheen. It's really intelligent. It's really smart, and it gets you so much closer when you add the refine. I mean, what I would say is that I think it overdoes it in places. Like it adds. I mean, there are different ways to refine, but I figured just strumming chords is the best way to do it. It adds low end and adds a bit of compression, like noticeably on the SLO. Capture and profile. Like the Quad Cortex managed to capture the SLO very accurately in terms of that clangy mid-range, that sort of wide open and that thumpy kind of response when you dig in, whereas the Kemper, it became flatter and it almost compressed it together, so it sounded like it had more gain, and it had like a low end thing going on in the low mids which the amp didn't have. The Kraken side of things, I have to say, I thought the Kemper did a great job of profiling the Kraken. The clean was so unbelievably similar in terms of sound. I'd say the feel of the clean on the Quad Cortex, again, matched the feel of the amp closer, but in terms of sound, it was negligible, in my opinion, in this room, which I really am impressed by, because usually, for me, Kemper struggles with cleans over distortions, but in this case, it was the other way around. When it came to the gain of the Kraken, the gain 2 with the preamp focus in. Now that's an interesting tone to try and capture, because you've got the preamp focus in, which is a mid hump. It's like a TS, it's like a tube screamer circuit in there. Now, the Quad Cortex did a great job. As you'd expect, it just sounded and felt really close, and I was happy with that. When I did it on the Kemper, I noticed way more low end once I'd refined, like tons more low end compared to and it was like a woolly low mid thing, which wasn't there. It's not a characteristic of the Kraken, but it was nicer than not having the low end, which it didn't have when I just profiled it without refining. And it added like a kind of a cocked wah effect, a quacky kind of mid-range thing. It still sounded wonderful and it felt really good to play with all that gain. And I think overall the Kemper really stood up against the Quad Cortex, and I'm really impressed, and I'm not surprised because it's a fantastic piece of gear. But it is interesting that when you do make your profiles, if you refine them, believe it or not, you do get a lot closer to the source sound. Now it's time for my opinion. What do I think? What is my opinion of all of this stuff? Like, I'm an owner of a Kemper, I'm an owner of a Quad Cortex. In my honest opinion, and take from that what you will these days, but for me personally, I prefer the Quad Cortex. Again, let's get rid of the UI, let's get rid of all the functionality stuff it does and just go on sound and feel. Quad Cortex, it feels better to me. It feels more like the amp. It feels closer to the feel that I'm used to in this studio using my amps into load boxes and all the rest of it. I think that's just fair enough. Like, you can't expect a piece of gear to, especially in this kind of industry, in the modeling digital industry, it's the same thing as saying like PS3 will always be the best, but now that we've got PS5 and it absolutely wipes the floor with PS3. Despite the games that came out for it, my point being that when we're talking about the kind of prosumer music gear, so anything that requires like, the digital side of stuff, modeling, software, tech, You know, we're not talking about traditional gear here with like valves and, you know, transformers. We're talking about the digital world, and it is way faster moving. Things always, you know, in the game industry, in the camera industry, you know, we don't care if the new camera comes out, the next best camera is better than the one that came out 2 years ago. Whereas for some reason, we'll buy a Kemper from like 10 years ago, whenever it came out, but yet something comes out that's more modern, more updated, does it a bit better, and suddenly it's a huge issue. Like, I don't necessarily think that's fair on competition or fair on the market or whatever you want to call it. Ultimately, as users, when we spend a lot of money on gear, we become proud of it and we buy into it and we get really involved in the ecosystem of it all and all the fun and all the rest of it. And so I can understand why people get a little bit defensive when the new kid on the block comes along and everyone's raving about it. I totally get that. And as far as I'm concerned, there's good reason to be raving about this product. I think it's just doing it right. It's in its early stages, don't forget. There's so much more time left in this thing, and there's some of the stuff that's going to be coming soon is going to just make it even better. So anyway, I'll stop rambling now. This has probably been a long video as it is, but I just wanted to say thanks for bearing with me. I appreciate you guys being honest and letting me know how you felt about the other comparison, so that's why I've done it again. Basically, I'm just trying to create the most accurate tests I can within my capability, within the gear and studio situation that I've currently got. There's going to be loads of different comparisons out there on YouTube with different methods of how to do it and different ways of doing it between QC and Kemper, QC and Axe Effects, QC and Helix, you know, like there's loads of different ones to do. I'm just doing this one in a way I figured would work pretty well. In any case, thank you for bearing with, thank you for watching this video. Thank you to both Neural DSP and Kemper for making great products that inspire us and get us to write music, which at the end of the day is the most important thing, right? In any case, let me know what you think in the comment section. Which do you prefer? What are your thoughts now that I've redone this video? I'd love to know what you think, but I'll link everything in the description box below. Thank you very much for watching. Like, subscribe, and share. I've been Rabea, and I will see you all very soon.